Приветствую наши дорогие зрители. Меня зовут Надежда, я являюсь менеджером платформы BookYourStudy. Для тех, кто, возможно, с нами не знаком, а кто-то, может, забыл, BookYourStudy занимается бронированием образования за рубежом. И если после сегодняшнего вебинара вы точно решили, что вы хотите подготовиться к экзамену за рубежом, либо уже готовитесь к поступлению, обязательно обращайтесь к нам. Мы вам обязательно поможем собрать все необходимые документы, поможем с тестами и, конечно же, окажем всю помощь и всю консультационную помощь во время вашего путешествия за рубеж до возвращения домой. Ну, мы подходим к нашей теме, и сегодня каждый, кто изучает любой иностранный язык, приходит к тому моменту, чтобы сдать тест на подтверждение своих знаний. И для английского языка таких тестов несколько. Самый известный, пожалуй, это все-таки экзамены IELTS и TOEFL. Про разницу в этих тестах мы расскажем чуть позже, а сейчас сосредоточимся на теме нашего вебинара. Сертификат IELTS необходим тем, кто планирует поступать в высшее учебное заведение, устраиваться на работу в Европе или Америке, или для миграции в англоязычные страны. Экзамен IELTS состоит из 4 частей: говорение, чтение, аудирование и письмо. И сегодня мы остановимся именно на части говорения, speaking. Мы пригласили наших партнеров, Лондонскую школу английского UK College of English, дать парочку советов тем, кто собирается сдавать этот экзамен, как успешно пройти этот этап. И наш сегодняшний гость Оскар. Оскар, hello.
Hi.
Say something about you.
Okay. My name is Oskar Czerniawski. I'm the Director of Studies at the UK College of English. And I have been working with the IELTS exam for 9 years, since 2009. And over that time, I've developed quite a lot of knowledge about this test. And this test is divided into 4 parts: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And today I'm going to be talking about speaking part 1. And would you like any more information at this stage?
Okay, Oscar, you can prepare for your presentation now. And I want to say something.
Sure.
Не забывайте, пожалуйста, что вы можете во время презентации задавать вопросы в комментариях. В конце мы обязательно все озвучим. Также не забывайте подписываться на наш канал для того, чтобы следить за обновлениями, за новыми вебинарами. И ставить лайки, если это видео оказалось вам полезным и понравилось. Также, если у вас возникают какие-либо интересные темы, которые вы бы хотели услышать и посмотреть, и от носителей языка, пишите нам на электронный ящик, который находится в описании: webinar@bookyourstudy.com. Все ваши пожелания мы учитываем и всегда ищем именно то, что вы хотите послушать. So, Oscar, I think that we can start.
Okay, so I will start by sharing my screen and putting on the presentation. Is this visible?
No, try again, please.
No, okay. So if I share, okay, I think this is going to be the one.
Okay.
Yes?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, and shall I begin?
Mm-hmm.
All right, and there will be no feedback. Is that right? At the end, there will be questions, but for now, I will be just speaking alone.
Yes. People can share with their feedback in comments, and I will read them out.
If you're willing to, you can read the comments quickly, and that way it can be a little more interactive.
I think we can do it at the end of the presentation.
Okay, all right, that will be fine. Okay, so this is the IELTS speaking part 1, and the first thing you should know is that there are 3 parts of the speaking test. speaking part 1, part 2, part 3. Part 2 is the monologue, part 3 is the dialogue, but speaking part 1 is a series of short questions. And the format of this, it consists of a number of different questions. The most familiar part, which exists in every exam, will be the questions about home or occupation. So in every IELTS test, there will be a question which is concerned with tell me something about where you live, or tell me about what you do. Before that, when you enter the classroom or the interview room, there will be some time when the details of the exam are recorded. And for the first few seconds of the exam, the examiner will not talk to you. They will be recording, they will be talking about the details of the candidate and the center number. And then they will ask you for your full name. After the details and the questions about your home or occupation, it moves on to a series of other questions, 8 questions on 2 more topics. And so you can see that there will be 12 questions in speaking part 1. And many students are concerned about how to answer these questions. When you answer them, you need to be aware that the examiner is trying to ask you 12 questions in less than 5 minutes. The speaking part 1 will never last longer than 5 minutes, and it should never be shorter than 4 minutes. And so if you're answering in a very short way or a very long way, you are creating a problem for your examiner, because in that case, they are not following the rules of the exam. So what is the ideal answer? Well, we'll move on to that later. But first of all, let's talk about the purpose of speaking part 1. We have a series of questions, and they're very short, and they're quite simple. Some of the questions might seem trivial to you. So, for example, there might be questions about your favorite color or the weather that you like. And there is a tendency among some students to feel that these questions are too easy, but they do serve a purpose. And the first purpose is to break the ice. Now, this is an idiomatic expression in English. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but to break the ice is at the beginning of a conversation when 2 people who don't know each other find a way to start to become familiar with each other and talk with each other in a more relaxed way. Of course, a speaking interview for IELTS will be a very anxious occasion for the candidate. And so the exam has been designed in this way to help the student relax a little bit with some easy personal questions. So in speaking part 1, there won't be very difficult abstract questions. They will be based on your personal experience. And this is meant to help the candidate to relax. There is another purpose of the speaking part 1, and this is to give a first impression of your language level. Even in the first few minutes of speaking, the examiner will have a judgment of roughly what your level is. They won't be able to say something like 6.5, but they will say more or less 6 or 7, or more or less 5 or 6. And so, although speaking part 1 in some ways is a less important part of the IELTS exam, because it's dealing with these shorter and simpler questions, it is also still quite significant because it's giving this first impression. So let's move on to the right sort of answers. And when we're talking about the ideal answers, how long should they be? Should they be long? Should they be short? And there are a few things to consider when we're talking about the ideal answers. If you give very short answers, these can be considered unhelpful because they are not helping the examiner to form an initial opinion of your language level. And also, they are not helping you to demonstrate how much English you know. And so if there's a question like, do you enjoy sunny weather? And you say yes, there will always be a response of why or why not, depending on what you said. And this is quite a standard standard way to extend your answer. If the examiner asks you why, they are asking you to say more. And you shouldn't take this as an insulting question. So, for example, if you have this simple question, what kind of, do you enjoy sunny weather? And you say yes. The examiner will say, why? Please don't say something like, well, obviously it's good weather, or something like that. You need to find a way to extend your answer. On the other hand, if you have long rehearsed answers, these are also unhelpful because they are unnatural. And if you are giving rehearsed answers, you're not demonstrating your fluency. You're just demonstrating your skills at memorization. And you're not using natural responses. And so you might be tempted to rehearse a long answer, or even to speak in a very formal way to try and impress the examiner, and this is also unhelpful. So my example of a long answer, imagine a question like, what is your favorite color? You can imagine a candidate who says something like this: let me tell you about my favorite color. My favorite color is blue because blue is the color of the sky and the color of the sea. And both of these things give me a sense of inner peace. Yeah, so this kind of question is a little overly dramatic and in fact isn't the best sort of answer because it's unnatural. On the other hand, a very short answer is also not good enough because it is not demonstrating your language skill. So I would say that natural answers are what you're trying to aim for, and you're aiming for between 1 and 3 sentences to an answer to a question in speaking part 1. So if someone says, do you often eat vegetables or something like that, then a natural but extended answer might be, yes, of course, I eat them every day. And yeah, I particularly enjoy carrots. And that would be enough to answer the question without giving a very rehearsed answer, but also without giving an answer that's too short. Bear in mind when we're talking about the length of these questions and answers that the examiner is aiming to ask several questions from 3 topics in 4 to 5 minutes. So they have to record the details of the exam for the record, and they also need to ask about 12 questions. So if you're giving very long answers, then you will reach the 5 minutes before they've asked 12 questions, which is not a problem for you, but it's a problem for the examiner. Or if you're answering in a very quick way, they won't reach 4 minutes. So to help the examiner to complete the test in a very standard way, it's helpful to give these answers which are neither very long nor very short. So the next stage of this presentation is going to be looking at expressions which are quite natural, which English people use in their daily speech, and these expressions, I think, are particularly useful as a way to express yourself in a natural way. And so first of all, you might need to mention that you don't understand a question. And you might feel afraid of saying that. You might feel nervous of admitting that you didn't hear the question or understand the question. And I'd like to reassure you that it does sometimes happen. For example, some examiners speak very quickly at the beginning of the test because they do not know your level yet, and it's possible that they are speaking too quickly. And so these are a series of ways to show that you didn't understand and you'd like the examiner to repeat the question. You should know that examiners are not allowed to rephrase the question, so they cannot put the question in a different way in speaking part 1. They can do that in speaking part 3, but not in speaking part 1. So here are a series of expressions. I'm going to read them and I'm going to repeat them more than once, just so that we can practice the pronunciation of these. Because these are short phrases, they have a much better effect if they are said in a fluent way. If you say them very slowly, they don't have the same effect. So here the first expression is, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. And catch that is a way to say that you didn't hear the question. It's not a question of not understanding it, it's about not hearing it. And so this is said on a daily basis by English speakers if they were distracted, if they were looking at their phone, if someone spoke unclearly. So let's practice the last 2 words of that. Let's say, catch that, catch that. You don't necessarily need to say the final T. You don't need to say catch that. You can say catch that with a glottal stop at the end. So you don't always need to say the T sound at the end. Didn't also can be shortened to didn't. So I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Didn't catch that. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Let's move on to the next phrase. And so this is a request for the examiner to repeat a question. And let's look at the first 2 words. The first word is could, and the second is you. But when you see D and Y, these 2 sounds together, in English, when they're said quickly, they are combined to make the sound J. So it's, could you say that again? Could you say that again? Could you? Could you? Could you say that again? Let's say it one more time. Could you? Could you say that again? Now, the third expression is something that not everyone knows about the IELTS exam, and that is that although examiners are not allowed to rephrase questions, they are allowed to clarify a single word. So if there is a single word that you don't understand in the question, you can ask for the meaning of that one single word. I'm sorry, what does photography mean? I'm sorry, what does photography mean? This can be very useful to you because very often when we have 4 questions about a single topic, there may be one key word in the topic which is going to be in each of the questions. And so if you don't catch the key word, then you will answer all of the questions of that topic incorrectly. So although it can be a little embarrassing to ask for the meaning of a word, if you do it once, it won't affect your score. Of course, if you do it 3 or 4 times, then it will count against your vocabulary. And here's one more way to ask for a repetition of a question, and it goes like this. Could you, yeah, as we said before, could you repeat that, please? Could you repeat that, please? So if you listen carefully when I'm saying it quickly, I don't say, could you repeat that, please? I don't say, could you? I say, could you? Could you? Yes, it's a j sound. And at the end of that, I don't say the t, I say that. Could you repeat that, please? So I'm going to say each of these one more time, and if you'd like to repeat them, then that's up to you. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you say that again? Could you say that again? I'm sorry, what does photography mean? I'm sorry, what does photography mean? Could you repeat that, please? Could you repeat that, please? So let's move on to an actual answer to a question. So you will have quite simple questions, and very often you need to say something like yes or no. But strangely in English, if you just say yes or no, this sounds a little direct, it sounds a little abrupt, and so we have some other ways to say these. So here we have absolutely, absolutely. And so this is a way to answer a very strong yes. So this can be very useful because many of the questions in speaking part 1 are quite obvious and straightforward. Do you enjoy music? Do you enjoy meeting your friends? Absolutely. That will be the obvious answer. And if you say yes in a sarcastic way, that would not be the best answer, and absolutely would be a very natural way to answer. In a similar way, you might say sure. And they both have this meaning of a strong yes. And we have one more, which is of course. Now, if you notice when I'm saying yes, my intonation is rising. My voice goes up slightly as I say them. And it's important to use this intonation. If you use flat intonation, then this can be an issue. It can show show that perhaps you are less than enthusiastic, and yeah, it's good to maintain a certain level of enthusiasm in your test. So let's say these with a rising intonation. Absolutely, absolutely, sure, sure, of course, of course. All right then. Now let's move on to no. Now, something that that may be surprising for speakers of other languages is that no can be considered an unexpected answer. So, as I said before, a lot of these questions are set up in a way that they have an expected answer. Do you enjoy sunny weather? Most people will say yes, of course. Absolutely. But sometimes you might have a different thing to say, and so you need to introduce this with a phrase like actually. And actually is a way to say I know that you're expecting a different answer, but I am going to give you my answer now. And so each of these ways are a way to, each of these expressions are a way to soften the no. So imagine a question like, do you enjoy music? Not really, no. Not really, no. I can't say I do. Actually, I don't in that case. If in the case of the last expression, we would need to match the verb with the one in the question. So if you have a present perfect question, for example, talking about an experience of going on holiday, yeah, have you been on a seaside holiday this year? Actually, I haven't. On the other hand, if there was a question along the lines of, yeah, do you enjoy sunny weather, then we would say something like, actually, I don't. So let's practice these softer ways to say no. Not really, no. Not really, no. I can't say I do. I can't say I do. Actually, I don't. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. Now, very often it's not so easy to give a straight yes or no answer, and in that case, we have a few different expressions, and you might want to use this stalling expression, which is well, and you can see it at the beginning of two of these expressions here. Well, it depends. Well, it's hard to say. And this is a way to express two feelings at the same time, some ambivalence in your answer. If you use this expression, it depends, you should know that the preposition that follows it is on. It depends on. Please don't say it depends of. This is a very common mistake. And you could also say yes and no if you are if you're trying to express two sides of one question. So yeah, for example, I don't know, let's say, is it good to have more money than your friends? Yes and no. And yeah, each of these is a way to introduce your answer. So don't forget, when we're talking about these answers, which are yes, no, in the middle, in each case, they're going to be followed by some other sentences. I'm not going to repeat these too much because I still have some other slides to follow. But let's just say, well, one more time. Well, it's hard to say. Now, in some cases, you will come across a repeated question. And in this case, you have a question where you seem to answer it, and then the examiner seems to ask you the same question again. And I think many candidates feel nervous at this moment. They might wonder if the examiner heard them or understood them. Many candidates feel pressure to answer in a different way the second time. But you have to remember that the speaking part one questions are scripted. That means the examiner is reading a series of questions from a script, and sometimes the answers to these questions overlap. They go over each other, and they might seem to be the same question twice. So, for example, imagine a question like, do you enjoy the weekend? A natural answer might be something like, absolutely, during the weekend I meet my friends and I spend time with my family, and we always play football on a Saturday morning. Now, that would be a very natural 3-sentence answer, a very good answer. But imagine the next question is, what do you do during the weekend? Now, it's possible that a candidate might feel angry about a question like this. Didn't you hear me? I just told you. I play football on Saturday. I meet my friends. Now, of course, this wouldn't be a useful way to answer this question. And you have to be aware that the examiner has no choice. They are reading from a script. And so you can say something like this. Well, as I mentioned before, I play football on a Saturday. And so you can repeat the same content if it is natural and appropriate. You don't need to worry that you weren't heard. And so this is maintaining quite a natural conversation. Be careful, though, when you say, as I said, depending on the tone, this can sound quite rude. If you say this with a cold tone and cold voice, as I said, I play football on Saturdays. This actually will create a bad atmosphere. So be careful. When you say, as I said, you need to say it with a smile. As I said, I play football on a Saturday. Now, at times, you will have some unusual questions. They can be called weird questions. They might sound like hard questions, and so you have to remember that there are thousands of questions which are written and prepared for IELTS, and some of them are not very reasonable. A friend of mine used to joke about an IELTS question. This was not a real question, but it sounded like a ridiculous question that it's possible to see in IELTS. What's your favorite size of spoon? You know, sometimes you will hear a question which just sounds ridiculous. And so you don't need to treat these questions the same as every other question. And so I think there's quite a useful expression you can say when you're faced with one of these questions, which is, I can't say I've thought about that before. So let's repeat that again. I can't say I've thought about that before. So if you notice, the T at the end of that disappears, that before. But the T before about at the end of thought links. So let's say thought about that before, thought about that before. I can't say I've thought about that before. This is a way of dealing with these difficult questions. So that's what I've prepared for you today. I just want to tell you some other things about the UK College of English. You can see a classroom here. This is our school. It's on Oxford Street. It's in the center of London. And we offer excellent courses on IELTS and in general English at quite low prices. And I think now it's time for questions.
Okay, so yes, we have some questions. So the first one, in what situations is IELTS necessary, and what is the difference from other tests?
Okay, well, IELTS now is probably the most popular test in the world, and it is used for university entrance, and it is also used for certain professions as a way of testing your proficiency in English. And apart from that, it is also connected to UK visas.
Thank you. So our next question. Okay, what are the secrets in monologue which allow to increase the result of the exam?
Well, the monologue would be a whole different presentation. So that's talking about speaking part 2. There are many things to be said about that, but I think that would take me another half an hour presentation at least.
Okay, I think that we can do it maybe next time. Okay, so next question. How much does it cost to pass the IELTS exam? I understand that we have different currency, but average.
I believe the price of the exam is £160. And I would say the price is similar in different countries. So whatever your currency is, I think it would still be equivalent to 160 English pounds.
Okay. So is it possible to pass the exam with just self-preparation, no additional courses?
Well, the IELTS exam is not a pass or fail exam. So there are different levels. The levels go from 0 to 9. So of course, yes, you can take the exam without any courses, and you can find out what your level is. But usually we have found that anyone who takes a specific IELTS exam can improve their score between half a band and the most I've seen is 1.5 bands just from an IELTS preparation course.
So it would be better to have some additional help from teachers?
Well, of course, yeah.
Okay. How does phonetics influence on the results?
Well, if we're talking about the speaking test, there are 4 categories in the speaking test. There's fluency, there's vocabulary, grammar, but there is also pronunciation. And pronunciation consists of several things, but that includes phonetics and intonation. So phonetics would influence 25% of your score in speaking.
So some words about your school. Is it possible to pass the exam at your school?
To take the exam at the school, no. There are certain centers which offer the exam. So these centers are separate from schools usually. So there are several centers in London. They're usually based in universities.
But you have a preparation course.
That's right, yes.
And how much does it cost?
I would have to turn over the price list to the people that we're working with. I don't have the price list in front of me now. But it does depend on the length of your study. So we have prices for the morning, the afternoon, and depending on how many weeks you join and what discounts and offers you get.
Yes.
But we can forward the price list to you.
Окей. Если вас заинтересовала школа UK College of English, вы, конечно же, можете пройти по ссылкам в описании на страничку школы на нашем сайте и посмотреть все цены непосредственно там. Там все это есть описание курсов и есть, конечно же, возможность забронировать. После брони с вами свяжется наш консультант. So, Oscar, I see that we have no more questions. Just I will check once again. So we have one more question. Sure. Are jokes possible at answer?
Of course, yes, and they can help you.
Okay.
Yes, it shows you that you have some confidence and fluency.
Okay. And it was our last question. Thank you, Oscar, for this interesting and really helpful presentation. Не забывайте подписываться на наш канал, ставьте лайки, пишите в комментариях ваши вопросы. Мы их собираем, обязательно свяжемся с Оскаром еще раз и зададим ему ваши интересующие вопросы. Также можно писать на наш email, который я уже озвучила, webinar@bookyourstudy.com. Я с вами прощаюсь. Oscar, goodbye. Thank you once again. Bye.
Bye-bye.
До свидания.